Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the CSS tutorial. In this episode I'm going to go through the height, width and max width properties of CSS. So the CSS height and width properties are used to set the height and width of an element. The CSS max width property is used to set the maximum width of an element, and then there's also minimum width and minimum height. So yeah, let's get going. So we have already been working a little bit with height and width, but I am going to give you guys an example. So I'm gonna make an H1 heading. It's going to say height and width CSS, and then I'm going to create a div element with the class of example, and yeah, I'm gonna type in that this div is 50 pixels height, has 50 pixels of height and 100% of width. Alright, let's take the example and let's make the height to be 50 pixels, width to be 100%, and make a border of 1 pixel solid. So there we go. This div has a 50 pixels of height and 100% of width. So yeah, those are pretty straightforward. One thing to note is that the height and width properties do not include padding, borders or margins. It sets the height or the width of the area inside the padding, border and margin of the element. Alright, so the height and the width properties have the following values. We can use auto. This is the default value. So the browser calculates the height and the width. Then we have the length. So the length defines the height in pixels, centimeters, whatever measurement you want to use. I like to use pixels, so let's set this to be 50 pixels. Then there is percentages, so I can set this to be 25% for example, except it's not working right now. 250 pixels does work. I am going to set the body have a height of 100 viewport heights, and let's see if the height 25% works then. Yes, it does. So for the percentages to work on the height or width property, you have to have the height of the body set to 100 viewport height units. If I remove this line, you can see that the box also doesn't have the height of 25% anymore. So basically, the 25% will always be 25% of the parent element. Let me give you an example. I'm gonna make an example 2 over here, another div element, and I'm gonna cut this line of text, and I'm gonna take the example 2. Oh, whoops. And I'm gonna add some text over here like hello, and then I'm gonna take the example 2 and make the height of that to be we're just gonna make that 50 pixels, and this is going to be height 25% and border 1 pixel solid. And we need a colon, there we go. And this div is going to contain the text 25% width, or height I should say. And it's actually a little bit too little, let's set it to be 35. Alright, I'm gonna set this to be 100 and the background color to be pink and the background color on this one to be aqua. So there we go. This other one has a height of 50 pixels. So the height in percentages is always going to be relative to the parent element. In this case, the parent element of this div is this. So yeah. Then we also have a height and width value of inherit. So basically this example 2 will inherit the values of this example right over here. So it will be 100 pixels in height and 100% in width. And then lastly we have the initial, and that means that the property will set the height and the width to its default value. And something to remember is that the height and width properties do not include padding, borders or margins. They set the height and the width inside the padding, border and margin area of the element. For example, if we make this one to take 50% of the width and this other one to take 50% of the width, and I am going to cut this and make it to be next to this, you can see that these don't go next to each other. I am also going to remove all the default margins and paddings, but still they don't go next to each other. So this asterisk is the selector that we can use to control every single element on the page. Alright, but if I go and take the body element and set the border size, the box sizing to be a border box, it's actually not still taking it. What if I remove the borders? No. Well, oh yeah, but we are not using display flex. Alright, so let's use the display flex. Alright, there we go. And yeah, so there's our H1 heading and then the remaining. But this is not exactly what I wanted to show you. I'm going to make a class of container and I'm going to cut these inside of here. I'm gonna remove this and then I am going to add the border 1 pixel solid, copy this line, there we go. And I'm gonna go and take the container class and make it to be display flex. Okay, it actually works even though I have the borders. What if it was 4 pixels? Yeah, it works. Alright, that's good. Alright, then we also have another property. For example, right now, if I scroll this page to be longer, it will stay the same. But with the max width and max height and the min width and the min height properties, we can set the minimum or maximum height or width. So, for example, I'm gonna use the container we got over here, and I'm gonna make the height to be 200 pixels and the width to be 800 pixels, and I'm gonna give it a border of 1 pixel solid. So basically the problem is that, let's create some sample text. If I make this small enough, it's not visible from over there. Now everything is visible, now it's not. So by setting a maximum width of 200 pixels, we can make sure that everything will stay visible even though I resize the window. We can also set a minimum height of 200 pixels. So if I was to size this window from up or above, it would stay at the minimum height of 200 and the maximum width of 200. So yeah, basically using the max and min width properties will improve the browser's handling of small windows. And there's an important thing. If you, for some reason, use both the width property and the max width property on the same element, and the value of the width property is larger than the maximum width property, then the maximum width property will be used and the width property will be ignored. So I'm gonna give you an example. Let's say that the width is going to be 400 pixels, border is going to be 1 pixel solid, and the maximum width is going to be 200 pixels. Then this one will be used. Now if I set this to be 600 pixels, it won't cause any issues. But if the width is higher than the maximum width, then the maximum width is the one which will be used. So yeah, that's the height and width properties in CSS. They are pretty simple. They can be used to style elements, images, icons, and basically everything. And yeah, that's it for this episode. Hopefully you learned something new, and I'm gonna see you in the next episode. Happy learning, everyone.